Okay, folks, we're back. You're listening to Live Mike. This is TNS Radio, Radio Seeking Solutions. I'm joined by Sven from the UK. Sven, we were talking about Alfred the Great, and you were doing an outstanding job of presenting his life and his accomplishments and the total contrast between the kind of man he was and the kind of leadership that we see here today. But please continue.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that, Mike. Yeah, there's a part about three Irishmen, and I was wondering whether any of the other listeners over there in Era might know more about it or know how this sort of came about. But I'll read again. This part's actually from the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle from the year 888. And it says, "In this year the Viking army went eastwards, and King Arnulf with the East Franks and the Saxons and Bavarians fought against the mounted force before the ships arrived and put it to flight. And three Irishmen came to King Alfred in a boat without any oars from Ireland, whence they had stolen away, because they wished to go on pilgrimage for love of God, they cared not where. The boat in which they travelled was made from 2.5 hides, and they took with them only enough food for 7 days. And after 7 days they came to land in Cornwall, and then went immediately to King Alfred. Their names were Dubslawny, Macbethath, and Melinmuin. And Shrivney, the greatest teacher among the Irish, died." And that's all it says about them turning up in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. But there's some notes here which I think describe a little bit more about them. It says the chronicler calls them Scots, which was the normal term for Irishmen in the late 9th century. And it says holy men from Ireland often chose pilgrimage as the ultimate expression of their religious zeal. Bede tells the story of St. Thurza, who came from Ireland to East Anglia in the second quarter of the 7th century, anxious to live the life of a pilgrim for the Lord's sake, wherever opportunity offered. And the boat was evidently a curragh, made from animal hides, stretched over a wooden frame. Compare the description of St. Brendan's boat in the late 8th century Navigatio Sancti Brendani. And their visit to Alfred's court was clearly a celebrated event, and it improved in the retelling. According to the chronicler Ethelweard, the three pilgrims were welcomed by the king and then set out for Rome, proposing to go on from there to Jerusalem. Other evidence for the presence of Irishmen in England in the late 9th and 10th centuries is assembled by Hughes, Contacts between the churches of the Irish and English. Some Irish pilgrims are known to have reached Jerusalem in the 9th century. So, Europe wasn't all, atomized at the time. There was obviously contact going right away from Jerusalem in the Middle East, right the way over to Ireland in the West. And there was this faith that united the people, yet they were also nationalistic as well. It was Anglo-Orthodox and it would have been Gallo-Orthodox. They each retained its individual national flavour, even though they were all, called Christians. They were still nationalistic, and this faith united them and formed the basis of their values and their ideals. And I think this was the last time that in England we actually had our individual sovereignty, and we were allowed to live how we wanted to, and there was a system put in place. The laws were there for our benefit. They weren't there to make money. They weren't there to be used to gain an advantage over people. They were there to provide compensation if you had some bad luck in life or if anything unjust happened to you. And the sovereign was the wisest man in the land, and he wouldn't have called himself that, but I think he was. And he set an example for everybody else to follow. He gave half his time to God. He gave, if you wanted anything, all you had to do was go and see the king and ask for it, and he would give it to you. And, I don't think people would have abused that, because they would have been in total awe of seeing him. They would only go and see him if there was no other way of getting whatever it is that you wanted. And at the same time, he would sneak out and give money to the poor and give alms to the poor. As I said earlier, a quarter of the money that was received was actually given to the poor. And before that, 10 hides of land were set up in perpetuity to ensure that someone was clothed, fed, and housed. And we're taught that this is the Dark Ages. And I really don't think it was the Dark Ages. I think it was the Golden Age for.
Yeah, that I totally agree with you there. I think that that is something that was put out there by, people with agendas about really a mischaracterization of what was happening as far as learning and scholarship was concerned.
Yeah.
But anyway, and that just, the people from the Enlightenment period, which I like to call the Endarkenment.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, that's my view, not anyone else's, and not TNS's, just mine. But anyway, please continue.
Well, that's pretty much most of it. He obviously had offspring. He had a daughter called Ethelfled, there's a statue of her, and she's well known for her valor in fighting the Vikings again, because the Vikings didn't stop trying to take over the country and invading. The skirmishes carried on after his death, and his line carried on right through up until the Norman invasion, where William the Bastard Usurper came over, and Harold was the king at the time. I think he got killed, and that was the end of the line. Basically, that was the end of Alfred's line of kings. And we had a bastard usurper king, and since then, that's when everything went downhill. That's when that was doomsday for England and Wales. That's why that Doomsday Book is called the Doomsday Book, because he united the country, he united England and Wales, and the people came to him and said, we want you to be our king. We will subject ourselves to you. We will obey your will. Be our king, basically. And he built universities. He built the towns up. He protected them from the Vikings. He brought teachers over to teach them. The whole country was illiterate up till that point. And there was a massive resurgence in the church, because, as he said, there was nobody from his race that would actually join a monastery. So he built monasteries, brought foreign monks and abbots over, and encouraged the people to join the monastery and to devote their life to charity and giving and doing what they could for other people. He obviously realised that you get out of life what you put into it, and to make yourself really happy, the best way to do that is to make others happy. And I think he was trying to get people to do that. He knew that the Christian values must have chimed with him and with his values. I think this is why the European race took off so much with Christianity. I think it was just values that were inherent in the European race anyway, and especially with Britain being the first place to actually become a Christian nation, and those quotes that say that happened right back up just after Christ was crucified. Britain was Christian because there were Druids here at the same time.
That's right.
They were both being persecuted by the Romans, and there were Christians at the Druid colleges. So they must have got on, and we know that the faith that they had, the closest thing if you want to find out about the faith that they had back then in England and Wales, the closest thing to it is the Eastern Orthodox Church of today, which is, it's very different to what people think of as Christianity nowadays.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I can't argue with you. Because,
and he's a saint in the Orthodox Church. It's Saint Alfred. That was the other thing I was going to say. His feast day is October the 26th.
How about that?
He was made into a saint because of the church and the spiritual revival and the learning revival that took place during his reign.
Now, at that period of time, correct me if I'm wrong, but one became a saint as a matter of public affirmation. In other words, if you had a group of people in a town or in a city and or a country, and they just simply proclaimed someone to be a saint, then you were, and the church affirmed it. But it was almost like the sensus fidelium of the will of the people in relationship to their recognition of the character and virtue that the man lived out throughout his entire life. So that's something that is different from the modern day, at least in my understanding of the manner in which one becomes a saint, at least in the Western Church. I don't know what methods are used in canonization, the process of canonization for the West. But anyway, listen, Sven, we're just about out of time. I want to thank you ever so much. Do you have any final thoughts you want to impart about Alfred the Great before I wrap it up? We got about one minute left.
Well, he, as you just say, he was made a saint by the will of the people, and he was made a king by the will of the people. And that's probably the last time that a true representative of the people has actually led the country. And thanks for giving me this time on your show, Mike. I really appreciate it.
Listen, it's not my show. I was just we had some free air there, and I thought we could jump on and finish that out. I know that you were very you really wanted to get that done, and I know that there was several people out in the audience that are very happy that you did. I know that Captain Stingray Moore, he was somebody that really enjoyed your presentation last time, and is very happy that you were able to finish up your final thoughts there on the subject of Alfred the Great. Okay, folks, listen, thanks for being here. Everybody out in chat and listening around the world, TRP, Bo, Captain Stingray Moore, Carl S. Davis, Edwin, Freeman Jack, or just Jack rather, Janice, Jim and Lorraine, Johnny, John McHugh, Josh Hunter, Kaiser, Lori, Mahatma Coat, Nick, Reverend Rashers, Andrew, RJS1, Gary, Sheepdog, Stuart, Suela, Suma Messe, The Don, Thomas, Stevenson, TRP, once again, and Vin, thanks everyone for being here, and Kaiser, great to see you here again too. Okay, folks, we're going to play, actually, we're pretty much off here, so we have about 30 seconds left. Hopefully, Rubber Ducky will be here, and you're going to have that great host from TNS to take over right after I depart. So anyway, listen, folks, thanks for being here, and special thanks to you, Sven. Take care of each other.